Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to another episode of The Ways We Move, the podcast that highlights innovative mobility solutions and the people behind them. My name is Nicholas Zart, and I am your host on this podcast, and we're going strong almost a year and a half with still plenty to talk about. And that's why I'm very excited about today's guest. Is Francois Lassale, who runs VAI, the rotary flight group, international group that changed its name from HAI to VAI. And we're going to talk a little bit about why they did that, what the scope is, and also how Francois is replacing James Viola at the helm of the nonprofit. And what is the goal? What is it doing? Now, I started laughing because I knew that Francois Lassale has a very French name, but doesn't really speak French. So we do joke a little bit about that. But I was very impressed with Francois's background from, down to Africa to the UK, Indonesia, now in the US. Francois brings a wealth of experience and information, and definitely VAI has a lot of great things going for it right now. If you don't know anything about VAI, you should definitely head on over there. This is really the helicopter industry that brings it all together. They also work closely with another dear good group of ours, and that's VFS, the Vertical Flight Society. And together they do slightly different things, but also work together well. And it's a great family. It's a great bunch of groups to have that really represent advanced air mobility very well. And we're going to talk a lot about how does that conventional airspace, these conventional helicopters, how do they look at these so-called flying cars and air taxis, or what we now call advanced air mobility, AAM for short? How does that integrate into all of this? And of course, and always, the importance of infrastructure. Without roads, cars mean nothing. Without rails and stations, well, trains are nothing. Same thing without airports. Well, what do airplanes and helicopters do, right? So we do broach on that very important topic there. Please like and subscribe. This means a lot to us. It helps us bring up our numbers. It helps also Google push us up on YouTube. Go to our website. Our sister publication is called electricairmobility.news, where you can also find a lot of articles. And I bring in about 20 years of experience when it comes to electric mobility, specifically on the infrastructure side of things. I have a very good idea of what the ecosystem looks like. And this is what we do over here. We talk about all of these things. So, well, let's have Francois introduce himself and tell us a little bit about what is happening at VAI. Thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe always, and let us know your thoughts. What do you think the future of vertical flight looks like? Are we on the right track here? Well, Francois, thank you so much for being with us today on The Ways We Move. I'm very excited because we've tried to schedule this for a little while now, but well, please introduce yourself. Who is Francois?
Nicholas, thank you very much. And it's a very, when we get into my background, I think it blows a few people's minds because they're like, well, hang on, you sound English. You have a French name, but you're actually African by birth. So it's confusing to most people. I speak colloquial French. I speak Afrikaans, obviously. And I speak Zulu because I learned Zulu growing up on the farm in South Africa. So I was born, yeah. I'll teach you how to say Saturday, Nicholas. Saturday in Zulu is Kabelu. You've got to be able to do the click. Kabelu is Saturday.
I know how to do this.
There we go. You've got it perfect. The tongue click.
Kabelu.
Kabelu. Yeah. So, I spent obviously time growing up in Zimbabwe. This is where I was born, to a French father and a South African mother of Dutch descent. And so that's why I'm a mixture of everything. I didn't get to learn French at school. I had to learn colloquial French, and as we talked about earlier, while my father was slapping me around the head, swearing at me, I learned how to say a lot of French swear words.
Swearing in French, lovely.
So, and I joined the army in South Africa as a soldier. I was an infantryman in a Zulu battalion because I spoke Zulu. It was a requirement. So it was a commando unit, a Zulu commando unit, and I went to war in Angola. I served in Angola. As a soldier, I was flown into the back of combat many times in the back of a helicopter, and I used to sit on the step with my feet out the door, going across the trees, going, "Wow, this is so cool." and landing and jumping out to get into a firefight and looking at the pilot. And he was waving goodbye to go back for a cold beer. And that my epiphany was then like, I'm in the wrong job. I want that job. Yeah, exactly. So
Yep.
that's how that was my sort of, I'd like to do that. No opportunities in Africa. So I ended up immigrating to the UK, whereas I was a school teacher for a while, teaching geography and PE, but while I waited to try and get into the Royal Air Force, I ended up getting into the Royal Air Force. And in this time, I had to serve my French national service because I have a French passport.
Oh,
So,
that's right.
yeah. So I had to do, I became a reservist in the French Army. I was still commissioned in the South African Army at that point. And then I became a commissioned officer in the Royal Air Force. So I was a commissioned officer in 3 militaries at the same time.
So you would have been the perfect spy.
Exactly. Oh dear. So, but started my journey into aviation in the Royal Air Force back then, and I've been doing it 35 years. So we could go on and on and on about my background, but I wanted to fly helicopters. I flew both fixed wing and helicopters in the Royal Air Force, and I was very fortunate to be a VIP captain in the Royal Air Force on helicopters. I flew the Puma and also worked in the Special Forces. So I was a pilot in the Special Forces, but never saw my wife. And when she fell pregnant, it was time to try and get more stability, and went to the airline world. So I was in the airline world for 20 odd years, and ended up serving in the Royal Flight, or the Emiri Flight, now Presidential Flight, in United Arab Emirates. Then left there, immigrated to the US because I did an exchange tour with the US Air Force in Colorado Springs. Loved it, and so ended up moving there.
Of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
So I loved my time in America, but then we ended up moving back to the helicopter world and back to London, as I worked with a company called Offshore, which was improving safety in the offshore sector. So oil and gas, wind farm, and search and rescue. And I did that for 6 years, and then was offered a position as CEO in Indonesia, in Bali, with an operation down in Bali. It was a utility long line flying helicopters for mining companies, but we ended up doing search and rescue and a whole air tour operations. We did a whole lot of stuff with 5 bases across Indonesia. Got promoted to the group managing director of the companies in Indonesia. And then Papua New Guinea, and we had a leasing business in Australia. So I spent my time down there. And then VAI came calling. And so ended up with the opportunity to come to VAI, moved back to the US, to Virginia and Alexandria. And that's where we are. It's a very potted history, Nicholas, of myself. There's a lot of avenues we could go down.
Yeah, I feel like I'm with someone I can relate with, because I also lived all over the world, went to international schools, so I definitely understand that very, very well. Yeah, I definitely understand the pace very well, and also what comes with it, saying goodbye to friends all the time. I mean, we're very familiar with that.
Yeah, your family has to be understanding. And my wife has been, bless her, she's been dragged around the world, and she's been very understanding. And I dragged her from Bali to come to America. And let me tell you, that was a big deal. So I owe her a big one.
I understand. Bali, it would be hard to wrench me away from there. I would say definitely I have a great idea of where I'm going to spend my retirement if ever I do retire, which I don't think is all that likely in the end. But there is one question I wanted to ask you. You said you were trained as a fixed wing pilot and as a rotary wing pilot. So when you were with the UK Army, you'd never thought about flying those VTOL, CTOL Harriers, the ones that, I mean,
ironically, I did, actually.
You did? Holy cow. So that is one heck of a I know the history of the aircraft. That's a fascinating airplane. Or is it an airplane? Or
I was called aircraft. So I went through flight training, and part of that process was to hold. In between courses, they sent you somewhere to hold. I was saying I wanted to fly helicopters. The Air Force was saying, no, are you crazy? You must fly jets. This is what the Air Force is about. So they sent me to a Harrier squadron. I was kind of holding down the Harrier squadron for 2.5 years, so I got to go and fly Harriers for a while. And then eventually they found a slot for me on helicopters, so that I went to go and fly helicopters. So wow. I was very, very, very lucky. Very lucky.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people who have both experience, but to have the Harrier experience in the middle, now you have that middle ground, and that is one interesting aircraft, to say the least. So,
Yeah,
wow, that's
yeah,
fascinating. So that
yeah.
gives you really a great background. So you are definitely in the right position. So you replaced James Viola now at VAI. You actually went through the transition of the new naming. Were you there for the transition of the new naming, or was it
I
under Jim?
was.
I can't remember
It
now.
it was under Jim. That was Jim's leadership to
Yep.
transition the company in or the organization into something that was going to be much more relevant to this new world that we're looking at. I was part of it because I was actually on the board at that time as
Oh,
the
I see.
international advisor. So Jim approached me and said, "Would you? We we're going to rebrand it, but we have I in our name, and we're not that international. You know, we got members in 70 countries around the world, but you know, our focus has traditionally been the US market.
Well,
And I was like poking him in the ribs, saying, "Yeah, you're not international," you know. So the board voted me in as the international advisor, and I was on the board for 3 years. So I was very fortunate, and went through that branding change in 2024 when we launched
it was in
in
2024.
Anaheim. I think it was Anaheim. Yeah, it was Anaheim.
Yes, it was in Anaheim. I used to live in
Hmm.
Long Beach, so for me that was also, by the way, both of them were such easy drives for me. Long Beach to Anaheim, Savannah to Atlanta. Thank you.
Yeah, much easier.
Much easier than traveling 12 hours anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Ah, okay, so you were also part of the transition. So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about, tell us about the transition and what does VAI do now? And I like the international aspect of it, obviously.
Yeah. So I'm very fortunate because the board is very progressive. I think we've got a very good board, and the board recognized the need for that, the need to be more international, the need to be more relevant to the whole vertical lift community. And the desire was there to make that change. And so they made the change. And Jim was the person who kind of transitioned the organization from HAI to VAI. And at that point, he got a great offer to go off to Gamma.
Right.
And I was very fortunate to be selected to step into the role. And that's one of the reasons I took the role, was because it's an exciting inflection point for us as a community, because I saw the opportunity of, well, we've got drones, you know, with the likes of Google and Amazon and Zipline and these major players who are going to be using these things in congested airspace. And then you've got
Yes.
the advanced air mobility folks, you've got all the new eVTOL stuff, which is not a dystopian future. It's
Nope.
here. And then you've got the helicopters, and we're all operating in the same airspace, right? And we share the same DNA. I think it's important to recognize that we're more alike than we are different. Design philosophy, sure, the way they operate, all that sort of stuff is certified. It's going to be a little bit different. But for me, that was a fantastic opportunity to join at this time to now take the organization forward. So that's what excited me. And when I left the businesses I was running in Southeast Asia, people were like, are you crazy? Why are you doing it now? You know, you're leaving a good job here and you're living in Bali, and why? You know, and I said, well, it's not just to lead the VAI team. I said, this is an opportunity to help be a part of shaping a global vertical lift community. So to have some influence across a global community is a much more attractive thing for me, and to help shape this new inflection point we're staring at. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Wow.
So we kept the house in
Yeah,
Bali because my wife wants to keep the house in Bali so she can go back every now and again.
I would hope so. I would hope so.
Oh,
There's so much to do in Bali. I think Bali, well, the whole Indonesian islands, including Malaysia and everywhere pretty much down there, is just so ripe for advanced air mobility, or at least the potential of advanced air mobility. That's something that I also wanted to ask you. When it comes to VAI, I also think of VFS, and you guys are different, but also, I mean, actually, when I think of advanced air mobility, my pillars are VFS, VAI, and AIAA, although AIAA to maybe a lesser extent, but also NBAA2. But you guys have always been there. You guys have also been very open and friendly to us. I mean, I remember going to Anaheim years ago, and AAM was always welcome. And we've also gone through the transition from AAM is going to replace everything to whoa, whoa, whoa. No, not at all. AAM is really going to connect the dots that are not currently connected.
correct.
So
Correct.
I've really enjoyed this a lot. So how do you guys see the future? How integrating UTM into regular ATM with everything that we have right now under 5,000 feet, that is a major head
Mm,
scratcher for most of
mm.
us. And of course, thank God we've been working for it for a long time. But how do you guys see all of this going forward? And what is the role of VAI in all of that?
Well, I'll let you know that the one thing I do know for sure is that nobody can do it on their own.
No,
Nobody can pull this all
agreed.
together on their own, right? It's
And
just not possible.
yep,
And that's why for us, collaboration is absolutely key to everybody's success, including our own.
absolutely.
That's why we work with Vertical Flight Society, Angelo and the team there. We're actually going to, I was just talking to him the other day on the phone, and we're going to
Good.
try and do something for the first time as a joint fundraising event. We're going to try
Oh,
and do that. Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So
Great idea.
that's the area in which they're very strong is
Yes.
fundraising and raising
Yes.
scholarships. And that's something they do very well. And so we're like,
Yes.
let's
Absolutely.
work together on that. Let's do something together. So that's exciting. And obviously we have a very broad brush of things that we do as an international organization. And I think for me, working together with everybody is a key enabler to the success. The airspace integration, you raise a valid point. So, and it's something maybe we spoke about earlier, but I think that when you look at the whole vertical lift community, there's a lot of heat, money, and energy behind this advanced air mobility, right? I know they don't like the name, but let's stick with it for the moment. If you look at how much has been invested over the last 5 years in the helicopter industry, just the helicopter industry, in hybrid propulsion, low emissions,
Yes.
low noise, new rotor blade design, it's about 6.5 billion. And these are very broad brush order of magnitude money, right? There's as much research as I could do, but that's tucked away in OEM budgets, in the manufacturer's budgets. When you look at how much has been invested in advanced air mobility over the exact same period,
Ho, ho,
it's
ho.
about $28.5 billion.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of money, and that opens a lot of doors, and it generates a lot of energy. And certainly in the US, there is the administration is being very progressive about
Absolutely.
integrating advanced air mobility and drones into this airspace. They do want to be seen as world leaders, it's great. I mean, it is ruffling feathers because it's trying to move the government faster than it's used to moving, right? And so
That's very
one
well said. You're right.
when I talk with Brian Bedford and Chris Rocheleau, they've got their hands full. They've got a very clear remit to move this along. But again, if I look to the agencies, if I look to ICAO, if I look to the operators, if I look to the manufacturers, if I look to us as associations trying to pull that all together, nobody can do it on their own. And that's why, as we talked about earlier, the manufacturers of advanced air mobility, the new guys on the block, are very focused on build, design, certification, sell, right? That is a normal OEM journey, manufacturer's journey. Some of them are looking bigger than that. Some of them looking at charging infrastructure and electrification. Some are looking at the bigger components like Eve, are looking at how they integrate ATC and how they bring that airspace integration together. You look at the cool stuff that the guys Beta are doing up in the Northeast in terms of the cool stuff they are doing. It's mind blowing. So they're looking beyond just the certification of the machine,
Absolutely.
which is interesting. And like I said, each one of them has a slightly different approach to how they're going to do this, which is also interesting because it makes it challenging for the FAA and certification.
For sure.
But the one key element where, we can't help them with investment, that's their deal, right? They're working through that process. A lot of them have got agreements with airlines because it's very attractive to have a big order book with the airline industry. But we're going, VAI, we're the ones that work in that vertical airspace that you're going to be using. We're the ones that are keeping the flight routes, the flight corridors open. We're the ones who are working to keep the heliports open.
Yes.
In New York and Indy and various other places like that, where we're in LA. And so these are the very things that you're going to be using, that infrastructure you're going to be using, which is what VAI does. This is what we do very well. And we've got a very powerful lobbying team. We've got a very powerful regulatory team that works with the FAA, works on the Hill, and keeps these businesses going, right? And so I think a lot of the advanced air mobility folks are kind of looking at us going, oh, yeah, actually, you're right. that is true. We need to be part of the VAI family because,
Finally.
it's taken a while, but I think they kind of see that now, and it's not going to be, the skies aren't going to go dark even through their own admission with these machines overnight. It's going to be a gradual integration, and the good thing is trying to put all the dots together. The FAA has got $12.5 billion cash inject to start the advancement of new ATC, because we're going to have to. Yeah, there's only so much human controllers can do, right? And
well, LaGuardia, absolutely.
So when you think about drones, AEM, and helicopters in the same airspace, you're going to have to use ACAS, the new version of TCAS. You're going to have to use AI modeling, separation, and it's not going to be. It's not going to be a controller sitting at a radar screen anymore, right? It's that we'll have to evolve from that, So, and it's dragging some of the folks who've had a lot of freedoms in airspace in America. They've been very, very, very lucky in this country.
Oh, yes.
But in congested areas, that's going to change a little bit. And there's a little bit of, hang on a second, I want to be able to fly.
Turning off your transponder because you don't want anybody to see your fishing spot is not a great idea. I totally understand. I get it, but no, it's dangerous, guys.
Yeah, and I think in the vast majority of the US where it's open airspace is fine, Class D airspace. But when you get into Class B and TMAs and congested areas, we got to be sensible about this, and that's where VAI is, advocating for the enhancement in safety and how we bring all this together. That was a long answer to your question, I think, Nicholas.
Yeah, and you've made so many points, and I'm struggling to remember. Oh my God, there's so many things I want to touch on. But I think the best point you've made so far, and this is my fourth disruptive technology introduction into our civilization. This reminds what you just said, how every of these AAM companies have one little forte or fort, as we say in French, right? But it's a big, gigantic puzzle right now. And it reminds me of the computer industry in the 90s. Everybody had one little thing that they were much better at. And so it's going to be interesting to see how all of this comes out. Beta, I have a very funny story about the beta simulator. Speaking of fixed wings and rotary wings. So I took off, with my collector, I push forward and, we're flying. Then I totally forget. I feel like I'm in an airplane and want to come back down and hit that vertipad, except I'm thinking of it, nose down, regular airplane, and whoa, what happened? So come back until I realize, oh yeah, helicopter style, crawl, grab. I haven't seen so far a company that really embodies all of it, and everybody has, Whisk Autonomous, Beta has the ecosystem. My goodness, can we talk about the ecosystem here? Because it's so important. Every company has something that they can chip in. That's why it's so important, you're right, to work together. And you guys really are in the center of it all. I'm glad that they finally see heliports are the way to go. And by the way, one thing that we've been pushing so that they kind of get away from this idea of vertiport and eVTOLs only is multiports, because indeed, like you said, we want drones to work. We want regular helicopters and airplanes to come and play with us. But we have to figure out what the ATM situation is. And so
correct,
that's the big sticking point. Well,
correct. Yeah. There's a point in having a heliport just for helicopters or a vertiport just for AEM. It has to be, as you say, multiport. That's true. I haven't used that word before, but multiport does make sense. Right? And certainly if you're designing and building one, you'd be crazy not to make sure it's certified for all things.
On the infrastructure side of things, that's one of the first things we do look at is not so much the airspace, but the closest point of energy. How much energy can we get? Can we get local energy and storage? We're going to need electricity, eventually hydrogen, who knows, sustainable aviation fuels. But what is the public transportation? Where's the closest rail? Are there any waterways? It really is a sort of a multi-port approach to it. And again, I think it points to how advanced air mobility is, it has the word air in it, but it's really linking the dots that are not currently connected right now. And I think your transition is really well done at the right time. And again, it is vertical flight. So you guys are in the right place for this. So you've been hearing positive feedback around that notion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the important thing to ultimately realize is that they are still aircraft. They're aircraft. Right. Whether it's a big drone delivering Amazon parcels or it's a or it's an eVTOL, or it's a helicopter, they are still aircraft operating in the same national airspace. And the biggest thing that we have to assure ourselves of is public trust,
Absolutely.
right? So that is front and center, a priority of literally every single one that we've spoken to and we've met. And that's why it was important for me to hit the road and go and visit everybody, which we've done. And we've met everybody, and that is front and center. Now, I will say that our board at VAI helped to create 5 strategic initiatives. And what I've done is, as I've onboarded in the organization, is we've now created our 5-year plan. And that is in service of those initiatives. The one thing that large associations like VAI tend to fall into a trap of is trying to be everything to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's not possible because we have such a wide sector of constituents and members. And so we have to be very focused and targeted in what really matters and what will make the change and what will keep safety, because safety underpins everything we do as an industry. I quote this regularly, but safety is the currency to our credibility as an industry. And so when I talk about public trust, I'm talking about safety. The rest does follow, right? So if as an industry, we're taking responsibility for our industry, we're advancing technologies to enhance safety in our industry, not only to keep them flying safely, because you keep them flying safely, you gain public trust, businesses grow, and so it goes, right? Counterintuitive way of doing it, but that's exactly how it works. And as I look at the industry and we look at the whole ecosystem, the one thing that we haven't touched on yet, and it's one of our key strategic initiatives, is workforce development.
Yes.
So
Yes. Good point.
yeah, because you've got a lot of new technologies coming in, and you're going to need to sort of fill places. A lot of them will be piloted, so there will be a pilot. Certainly, some of them at the initial stages, and they may move to autonomous, but some of them are designed to be piloted. You're going to need electrical engineers and mechanics for this new world. And where do they traditionally pull from? The helicopter industry.
Yeah,
by and large.
Yep. Yeah. It's once you know how to work on a helicopter, you can pretty much figure out everything else. I mean, airplanes are, I'm not going to say easy, but they're probably slightly ever so easier.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Mechanically, an airplane is like way easier than a helicopter.
Yeah.
You're like, it's what do we say? It's a million parts flying in close formation. A helicopter,
Very well said.
all thrashing in opposite directions.
Yeah, the other one that I always like is helicopter pilot said, you guys in your airplanes, you can go to the bathroom. We can't.
No, exactly.
It's a hands-on experience, and the focus is on from the moment you hover to the moment you land, and even after and before. Yeah.
And so it's one of our strategic initiatives, workforce development. So we're building that out. It's part of our 5-year plan to be very serious about building a pretty robust scholarship scheme. We have a foundation, so VAI has a foundation to do that, where we can accept donations and scholarships. We're working with the Vertical Flight Society, and we'll work with other sectors of the industry. We had a good meeting with Embry-Riddle the other day. I've been on the road talking to a lot of the schools, and we've visited schools in California, in Texas, in Arizona, in Florida, up in the Northeast as well. So I'm going and visiting everybody.
You know that big one in Atlanta, right? Georgia Tech?
Yeah, Georgia Tech. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's true.
Fantastic.
We visited a company called Rotor near Boston. And so what they're doing is they're working closely with Robinson on taking a helicopter but making it autonomous.
Yes.
And it's a bunch of young guys out of MIT who just, it was really cool to see it. And again, a completely different approach to it, right? So they take a certified machine, but they make it autonomous. So we're moving pretty quick. This industry is moving pretty quick, and this VAI wants to be at the center of it to make sure that all this comes together. But again, as I come back to my point about workforce development, we are staring at a 10-year cliff, I think, if our guesstimates are right in terms of pilots and mechanics, just in the helicopter world. Yep. Never mind advanced air mobility or the UAS world or RPAS world. So the average age of a mechanic today internationally is 56 years old. And yeah, incredible, right? And we're not filling the pipeline quickly enough.
No.
So we've got to be smart about how we do this. This is before advanced air mobility starts getting traction and growing and employing more and more. There's going to be a demand to meet those requirements as well. So VAI is trying to look at the whole ecosystem in areas where we can help support keeping heliports open to be converted to multiports, to include Vertiport, electrification, fire suppression, which is going to be important because it's different to traditional fire suppression,
Absolutely.
completely different.
Absolutely.
And pulling all of this together is going to require a big push. I don't want to diminish the amazing work that the advanced air mobility folks have done in designing, building, and certifying these new technologies. It's mind-blowing. But I'd say it's almost the easiest part. Because now you look at getting public trust, you look at electrification,
yes,
how to build out the grid to provide high power units for rapid charging. I mean, this is a big hurdle, right? There's so much to do on the ecosystem side, as you said earlier. This is where VI wants to play a role and wants to try and help. And this is where workforce development can come. This is where bringing the community together to think about this, we play that role because these are all our constituents. And so we can be that conduit.
Yeah, you said so many important things in here, and it's public desirability that comes into it. In aviation, you wake up with safety in mind, you go to sleep with safety in mind. You are basically working with human beings directly. You're putting them up in the air. Simply said, right? So you want them to land correctly and all of that. And you're also highlighting a really important thing. You're right that, and in every mobility and transportation segments, there is the vehicle, but then you have the infrastructure to the side. And so we were having an interesting conversation yesterday with Gaël Lebris at WSP. We were talking about how interesting it is that in the US, 97% of the vehicle makers are right here in the US. But in Europe, it's infrastructure. They have the infrastructure, the advanced air mobility infrastructure companies out there. So we were trying to figure out why is that? And of course, then we started talking about, airports are privatized maybe in Europe. That might give them a bit of a leeway there, but whereas over here they're not. And so we're trying to figure out why is the discrepancy. And this points to, our original conversation around, it's incredible that about 97% of the funds are on the OEM part of it, which is the vehicle. And then you look at infrastructure and there is practically nothing right now. Yes, we've heard about updating heliports and making them, withstand the heavier tonnage of these electric aircraft. But there's a lot of complexity. We've had Rex Alexander many times on this podcast. There's a lot of work to be done. And then finally, you said something that you and I have in common. We were both teachers, so I love educating people. One thing that we noticed in 2006, I was getting interested. I came from a very traditional, Bugatti, Alfa Romeo, Ferrari kind of world. And then all of a sudden I saw these electric cars and I'm thinking, what the heck is that? And this is 2005, right? But I drove one and I thought, oh, heck, this is like a lager and an IPA. It's still beer at the end of the day. I like it. But the first questions we were starting to have thinking about the infrastructure is who is going to work on that? Obviously electricians, right? And we have now that same problem in advanced air mobility is who is going to work on that? What does MRO look like? Because certainly overhaul cannot be everywhere at the same time. You're going to have to ship these aircraft sometimes across the country to get them fixed. In the case of Indonesia, what happens when you're stuck on an island somewhere? Do we need a boat? There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think, and that's really on the infrastructure side of things. And I think this is where you guys will do probably the best work here. At least that's the way I'm looking at it.
I think so. I think, if you look certainly in the US, why is there so much energy here in this sector from the manufacturer standpoint to get these things? So whether it's PE, venture capitalists, investors, it's sexy to invest in aviation. It's not sexy to invest in infrastructure.
No,
I mean, I don't want to break it down to that. There's a million other reasons, but it's less sexy to spend money in infrastructure. That's where us, with all of our constituents, the manufacturers, the end users of these things, and the current operator community, lobbying and working with governments, working with states, working with ICAO, working with EASA in Europe, working in other parts and regions of the world, and down in Brazil, very progressive in this area in Brazil, right?
Absolutely.
With the regulators. But I come back full circle to what I said at the beginning. Nobody could do this on their own. And that's where governments are going to have to step in and say, okay, well, we've got to provide some form of tax relief or subsidies or investment in this infrastructure to make it work, because, they put a lot into ATC. That's a good start.
That's a good start.
But that's in the US, right? And in Europe, they're very progressive in infrastructure, probably much more so than here, but a totally different operating environment.
Absolutely.
And much more congested. So,
yes.
And a tougher environment in which to operate too, as well.
That's true. I mean, the philosophy is very different. It's more top-down decision making, which probably facilitates a little bit, but at the same time can be a little bit slower, clunkier, bulkier.
Yeah.
Over here, we get an idea, then we find the investors, and then we get going. Again, pros and cons everywhere you look at. You actually made a really interesting point, and government should always step in to kind of get the ball going, but of course not, take it forever either. And I think one state that has done a brilliant job, as much as Beta has done a great job to transition from a UAM air taxi company to an ecosystem taxi company with, hey, by the way, we have 2 aircraft for you, is Florida. Florida really absolutely got it right. Fund these vertiports, fund these multiports with the government money for now, and then after that, it will pay back through traffic, which is, by the way, exactly how airports function, right? All around the US, right? You need that federal money to get going, and then we buy the tickets, and that gets back into the system. And hey, it works pretty darn well. Florida so far is the only state that has done that. I just wrote an article for our website, electricairmobility.news, and it's fantastic. It's already there. There's the blueprint right there. There you go.
Yeah, it is. Some states are pretty progressive in this area, and the Northeast as well are very progressive.
Northeast too, yes.
Yeah,
Texas,
definitely up.
Utah, Washington, even Washington
Yeah.
State, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, they've got the drone community have done a study in Dallas for a long time, for about 10 years now. So they've fully invested in that, and that was actually. Do you remember back in the day? It must have been about, goodness me, when this all kicked off. It's been going for nearly 15, 20 years now, but probably about 10 years ago, they were talking about Uber working with one of the, I can't remember who it was, one of the advanced air mobility companies. It wasn't Lilium, it was one of the other ones.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you mean Uber Elevate, when they had, Joe B. Archer, all of these guys, and they were, they gave us a blueprint of sorts, right? I'll get a bit naive at the time, but that was the impetus. That was wow, finally we can do this.
They said they're going to start flying. It was Dallas and Dubai, I think, and they're going to start flying. I think it was 2025. They're going to start flying with piloted vehicles.
Yep.
I think they're still pursuing it in Dubai. I don't know about Dallas, but anyway, Dallas was trying to embrace that as well. So Texas is pretty progressive in that area too.
Texas is pretty progressive. I think that's one of the things that we also notice is that, again, this is aviation, right? We're more conservative because of safety, because safety is first and foremost. We're not going to be flying in New York City just yet, guys. We're going to start flying where there are lots of fields, lots of places where we can land safely. And of course, just like EVs, it started with fleet owners. It was cargo. It was, deliveries and things like that. So we're seeing that maturity in the industry, and I think it's amazing that you guys are right there too, as a sort of a bridging platform between conventional airspace and this new wild frontier of the air.
It will happen over time. I think it will be a transition. Let me give you an example. In London, there's a small airport in London called City Airport, which was sort of a more, City Airport, right? So it's an international airport, but it's a small airport, and it was designed. It's a short runway. It's an interesting approach from an airline perspective, pilot perspective. It's an interesting approach, but that's why there's only small aircraft go in there. But they built the Docklands Railway line from City Airport going into London. That was an autonomous train. There was nobody driving that train. This was years and years and years ago. Everybody refused to get on it. Nobody would get on it. We need a driver and a conductor. We're not stepping a foot on this train. And that's always an interesting story when I look to the world that we're looking at now in terms of public perception, public trust. Would you get on a machine without a pilot? And Dockland, okay, it's trains, so it's different. It can always stop. But the thing is that the public refused to get on it. So they went, okay, we'll put a driver and we'll put a conductor on it. They sat there with their arms folded because there was nothing they could do. There's no controls.
Just a what?
So It just they just sat, and that made the public happy. They would get on it, and I think a year or two afterward, they pulled them off, and it's been going for
That was it. Yeah.
decades.
I've I've always wondered, the very first person who jumped on a horse and realized, wow, I can go faster and I can haul a lot more. The other ones, what were they saying? Whoa, we were not supposed to go on that. I used to be a skier, and when the carbon fiber skis were coming out, kid you not, but there were posters that said if God intended us to ski on fiber skis, we'd have fiber trees. And so, hey, it's the way it is. Steam engine, same thing. Electric motor, same thing.
Yeah.
Gasoline engine, same thing. New technologies do that. And biologically, we are supposed to keep 1% going back just in case anything happens to save the race. I totally get that, but it should not be the dictating factor. This is a once in a lifetime amazing revolution in our societies, and we're seeing it right now. And it's funny because when I think of autonomous, there's so many things that we now take for granted, but in the 90s when I was teaching and computers were coming in, yeah, there was a lot of, oh my goodness, classrooms are going to be filled with computers. And well, lo and behold, there's still teachers in a classroom. We're still using our computers. In fact, we don't give it a second thought, having a cell phone in our pockets, listening to everything we're saying.
Exactly.
But, you got to do it slowly, the transition. Hence, the public desirability, which is so important and dear to us, is we have to make it seem like it's cool. And quite frankly, the first time I saw an iPhone, I really didn't feel like I really wanted to watch a movie on an iPhone. But yeah, in hindsight, that was a great move.
Oh man, I was such a geek, man. I bought the first iPhone. I loved it when I first came out. Yeah, and now you believe, how do we live without these things? And then
how do we live without them?
And then it's like, why do we live with them? They're so distracting. We're addicted to them. It's we've gone full circle, right? Full circle. And I've bought an electric car now, and I love it.
Yes.
It's
what do you have? Which one did you buy?
I got the Porsche Taycan. So
good for you.
yeah, so it's a rocket ship.
Yes, it is. It is. It is.
It's lovely.
I got to see the Lucid Air in 2017 when Peter Rawlinson was introducing it to us, and it was just, I was like, wow, we've made it. And by the way, that was also one of the reasons why in 2014 I switched over, because I felt like the EV world was already happening and everything, but it was something else to see. It was who was it? Dufour Airspace flying already in an Acrobat airplane for 45 minutes. I thought, wow, that's it. This is it now for sure. So
yeah,
we're now getting into the more personal part of this podcast. So I want to ask you more personal questions, such as, what is wrong with you? What are you doing? I mean, this is absolutely insane what you've taken on as a role, as what you're trying to do. So tell us a little bit about your motivation. What gets you out of bed in the morning to do the things you do, instead of just get a good old job and don't think twice about what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a good question, Nicholas. So
I was your wife to come in and say,
yeah, no, she'll give you a nice. She's probably not going to give you the answer that I'm going to give you. she'll agree more with, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with your head? Look, I was running 3 businesses in Southeast Asia. It was a pretty good deal. It was a good gig. Profit share in the companies, and running a team of two helicopter operators and a leasing business, mapping out the future for building out a bigger group of companies. Living in Bali, it was pretty cool. And then this opportunity came up, and everybody said, "Are you sure you want to? Are you only going to run a much smaller team?" Okay, yes, it's the biggest vertical lift association in the world, but it's a much smaller team compared to running 3 companies. And I said, no, you're missing the point. The point is the ability to lead, or at least help lead, a global industry and help shape a global industry. That is far more exciting. And it's far more exciting. It's very exciting. Not more exciting than what I was doing, but very exciting. And we're at this inception point of bringing these communities together. So drones, advanced air mobility, and helicopters together, how we integrate that community, how we bring them together to understand that we are all vertical lift. We share the same DNA. We all operate in the same airspace. We're all aircraft. And how do we do it safely? How do we gain public trust? How do we, it's so much easier to have that conversation with regulators, with lawmakers, with customers, with end users, with everybody if we are leading our own industry as safely as possible. So that for me was one of the major driving factors to leaving our house in Bali and moving to Virginia in Washington, D.C.
What a difference.
So my wife's still reeling from that decision. I think I'm going to have to pay dearly for it. But this is so exciting. It's such a cool point to be. And I think I said earlier, where we're now representing a much larger cross-section of the aviation industry. And that's to be at the front of that and help lead that charge, for me, is incredibly exciting. And I'm very passionate about it. So that's probably how my wiring in my head works. When going to fly helicopters in the Air Force from fixed wing to helicopters, everybody thought I was crazy. Like, why do you want to do that? And I was like, I just love the idea of vertical lift and helicopters. So that's probably, I don't know if that explains it, but that's probably the wiring in my head.
It does.
To why I ended up here.
Yeah, it does. The passion is very palpable, and the right man for the right job, definitely that comes across very well. And maybe another question to follow up with that is, for those who are listening or watching this podcast, what would you like them to walk away from everything that we've talked about today? I know it's a very cliche kind of question, but it's also an important one.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. For us, collaboration is very important. So I want people to understand that VAI is about collaboration. Yes, we are one of the largest in the vertical lift community, but for us, that doesn't mean anything less than we want to collaborate and partner with other folks in the industry to help move the needle. So for me, that's very important. Safety is the currency to our credibility. So it does underpin everything that we do and everything that we talk about and everything that we stand for. We created our values in VAI when I got here. I just wanted to set out our values. It was part of the rebranding where the board worked on it. And what I did is I sat down with the team and we worked on our values, which comes out to an acronym called SPIRIT. And the S obviously stands for safety. Right at the beginning, we put safety first. Yeah. So, and I think, so that's kind of what we stand for, the space in which we stand, representing our community, and is bringing the whole community together is the important part for us.
Yeah.
And the other message I'd like to give is nobody can do this on their own.
No.
What's going to help us, and I think another takeaway, is the fact that we are going to be pursuing data very aggressively. We've already started that program. Yeah. So we will be data driven. The complexity is you'll have so many constituents making a demand on your time saying, hey, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. And it's difficult. You get pulled in 50 directions. So absolutely, we're going to be very focused. The data will lead us in the right directions. It'll highlight to us what matters, where the weak signals are, where we need to focus our limited resources and our attention. At that, and I say to the helicopter operators out there and soon to be the advanced air mobility operators, the most powerful thing you could do to protect your operation, to protect your livelihood, to protect our industry is when we do these focused studies is to share data with us. And sharing data is very powerful. Lessons learned, knowledge sharing, best practice. And then if you have a problem, you share that in a confidential, non-judgmental, anonymous way. And we're building the platform to be able to do that. And I've done this before in a previous life with the offshore community, and it worked wonders because the operator community owned it. And it was the most powerful thing we did because now it allowed them to benchmark themselves. So I think that there's so many other things I could talk about, but those are kind of the highlights and takeaways.
Yeah, and I think that last point is very important. How to offer a space that is non-threatening, where you can share without feeling that your IP is going to be shred apart. I think that's really important. I've been using AI for the past 3 years. So I'm an avid AI consumer, and getting all of that data sorted out is something that really will help with. It's not going to run vertiports anytime soon, but eventually one day, but that's besides the point. Let's shape today's future right now.
Correct. And I always say, correct. And I always say, sorry, stepped on you there, but I always say, the most important thing is you've got to know what question you're trying to answer. That's the start point. And so we will not be saying, give us all your data and we'll figure this out. We have industry advisory councils. We get together with a bunch of very smart people. We'll look at what data we have today and where we need to focus. And we say, okay, well, what question do we want to answer? Let's get that data. Then we go to the community and say, give us that data. If you're in it, you get the benchmarking tools.
Yes.
If it's pay to play. So if you run it, you get the benchmarking tool. So it's about understanding what questions you're trying to answer. Then you focus the data on that. You build the smart analytical and AI platforms to help us produce reports. And we are focused on getting an impact report into every lawmaker's hands every year. Very, very important, because as an industry, we've been pretty poor at selling ourselves. And we're different to the airline industry, right? Because the airline industry moves people. We do a whole lot of other things, right? We put out fires, we save lives, we rescue people offshore, we help produce barrels of oil, we build pylons, we build cell towers, we build infrastructure.
Roads, infrastructure, exactly.
There's so many things we do as an industry that people just don't see, and how we support GDP growth, how we support employment. That's kind of invisible to a lot of people. They just go, "Oh, these things are noisy." It's like, no. And so that's one of the other things that we're going to be doing with data. So safety and advocacy are our two initial focal points on data.
Well, I have to tell you, I have a lot of juice towards that. Advocacy is something that I've always done pretty much all of my life, actually. So that I do understand that. And also just trying to get people to understand that, hey, infrastructure is sexy. And even if you don't get that, well, infrastructure is the glue that bonds it all together. With that infrastructure, $1 billion investments doing diddly squat, right? So get on
Correct.
with it, because infrastructure is sexy. And you made such a great point. You're right. The whole vertical flight industry does so much, and yet not a peep in the press. So that's why we have this podcast, so we can talk about these things and get people excited about it. And so, Francois, it's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast today. I mean, truly an open invitation. There's so many other things that we need to talk about, and I really do look forward to having you back on the podcast.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Any last words of wisdom before we say goodbye?
I don't know if I've got words of wisdom or wise words, but we'd always say at the Air Force, keep the blue side up, stay safe, right? For me, it's safe flying to everybody, and I look forward to joining you on the next one, Nicholas. It'll be fun. There's lots more to talk about.
Absolutely. I'll share my line. It's there are more solutions than obstacles. We just need to find them. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Francois, and
Thank you.
We'll see you again very soon again.
Thank you.